wrote a story for ESPN today, a fascinating development. And you may remember us talking about this before, but it was more of a pie-in-the-sky kind of thing. We didn't realize that what Andy Staples was talking about a couple months ago now, right? It's been 5, 6, 7 weeks since we talked to Andy, where he wrote this story called SEC versus All Y'all, is what he called it, about how the league should consider just kind of doing their own thing. They produce more national champions than the rest of the sport combined. They have more money. They have more viewers. They have more everything than the rest of the sport. So why not just stop dealing with the Pac-12 and the ACC and the Big 12 and just do your own thing? That was the premise of Andy's story. We talked about it a lot and just kind of put it to bed because it was a good idea, great story, Andy's the best, but that's kind of all it felt like. Well, Pete Thamel has given some legitimacy to that idea to the point where Greg Sankey and an SEC AD, a name that some of you guys probably won't like to hear, are speaking about it publicly. Here's reading from ESPN. A variable that shouldn't be underestimated is that the SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is still mad about the way the college football playoff expansion talks collapsed earlier this year. You guys may remember, he wrote the proposal to expand to 12, although 4 is better for his league, and everybody was mad that Texas and Oklahoma were joining the SEC, so they voted it down despite what was best for the sport. Apparently, he is still unhappy about that. Back to the story. He's been openly vocal about his displeasure, and that's going to guide league decision-making. There's been a general erosion of trust on the collegiate commissioner landscape since the chaotic COVID-19 summer of 2020. You guys remember how that all went down. Here's Greg Sankey. Whatever collegiately existed among those 5 commissioners appears to be gone. Oh, that's, a veteran collegiate official to Pete Thamel. Sankey's in such a catbird seat right now. The notion of the playoff expanding to 12 teams during the current contract was officially ruined in February, meaning a 4-team playoff will exist through the 2025 season. From there, uncertainty obviously is bubbling up. One idea that will be talked about by SEC officials in Destin is the notion of the SEC creating, running, and profiting from its own intra-SEC postseason. The most obvious model would be an 8-team one, but there are others that will be discussed. Let's stop there for now. Think about that. That is going to be talked about at league meetings this week. The SEC deciding, you know what, forget you, rest of college football. We're going to have our own 8-team playoff where half of our league is going to make it. And that's what we're going to do. That is something on the table that's going to be discussed after they get the Saban Jimbo crap figured out at the SEC meetings this week. This is, it may not happen, I'm not saying it will, but this is legitimizing the idea, which should be scary for the rest of college football.
I don't understand. I mean, I guess I do understand because people are useless. It was right there. The golden goose. It was right there. All you had to do was sign on the dotted line. And you didn't. And now you may lose everything because the guy who has the real power has shown up. And, he's basically like, hey, if you don't want to do things, you want to do things your way, that's fine. We can do things our way. And we'll make more money and we'll, be more legitimate than you. Nobody, I feel like sometimes the people who work in college athletics, and maybe I should say this is true about government too, but again, I just don't feel like going down that road. But nobody thinks about the future. And nobody thinks about, what's best for everybody. It's all about what's best for me at this moment in time. It's never, you can't even convince somebody to hey, what's best for you 5 years from now? You can't get people to look that far down the road in college athletics. And they're all about what's best for me at this moment in time. And, now they've, people, decided to act like little children. Well, little children get spanked. And that's sort of where we are right now.
Here's another quote. Scott Strickland, the athletic director at Florida, not to brag.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not to brag, we vacationed in the same general vicinity last summer because I saw him and chickened out on wanting to ask him about Texas and Oklahoma. Anyway, here's his quote. We have an incredibly strong league and one that will be even stronger once Texas and Oklahoma join. The focus should be on how we as a league use that strength to further position the SEC as we face new realities. Commissioner Sankey has encouraged our athletic directors to think creatively, and an SEC-only playoff is a different idea that we should absolutely consider. That is a sitting athletic director in the SEC saying that they should consider having their own playoff. Now, let's just go crazy town right now and say that this does happen. Would you like it?
No, I don't think so. There's something I'm not one of these, SEC type people, but at the same time, I do take a little bit of pleasure in watching the SEC smack down Clemson and Oklahoma. Now, of course, they're about to join, but at Ohio State, I just enjoy it. I get a kick out of it. So I don't know. I mean, what about this am I supposed to think is different than just regular, the SEC championship game? Now we're going to bring, 2 more SEC teams in. Usually those teams have 2-3 losses. No, I don't know. It's one of those things that sounds good in principle, but I don't know how it works in the execution.
More quotes from the story. In Sankey's view, there was a significant sacrifice that may or may not come around the next time there's talks. Remember, he felt like he was really sticking his neck out. Regardless of what you think about Greg Sankey, he is the commissioner of the SEC after all. And he felt like he was sticking his neck out for playoff expansion despite the playoff era being the best for his league, the 14 playoff era.
Yeah.
From the story, the SEC had 2 teams face off for the College Football Playoff Championship last year and has won 12 of the last 16 national titles. The SEC's 5 different title-winning programs over that span, as you guys know, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida, and Georgia, are more than the rest of the sport's other 3 winners, which is Clemson, Florida State, and Ohio State. It's not lost on Sankey where the leverage lies. And I'm with you. And we've gotten a couple texts on this. We'll get to your text after the break. I would hate this. I would hate it if it came to. I would hate it because all you would have are rematches for the playoff. That's all you would have. Every year it's just rematches.
Alabama, A&M, and Florida, Georgia. Like, I've already seen those games.
Yeah. And the difference is, like, take the NFL, for example. There's a lot of rematches in the NFL playoffs. It's a 32-team league, double the size of the SEC, and there's more parity in the NFL. We would get the same repeat games on an almost annual basis to determine a national champion. I really hope it's just a scare tactic, as somebody on the text line said. I hope that you are right and that this is not truly something that they are actually considering. Because I know college football is broken. All of you know college football is broken. I mean, you heard the number. 12 of the last 16 national champions have come from one conference. More SEC teams have won the national championship than the rest of the country combined. And you might be sitting in your seat thinking, okay, well, then why do we need the rest of them? For some semblance of difference. Something new. I mean, yeah, Michigan got smoked, but at least it was a different helmet that played Georgia in the playoff, It wasn't Clemson this time. It was somebody else. We need that to keep the sport alive. I understand what they're doing. I really don't like the idea, though. And I don't think it would go through, but just the fact that they're even thinking about it worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. I don't see how this is good for the sport. I see how 12 teams is good for the sport. I don't see how an SEC only playoff is good for the sport. But
there's more.
I don't think it's going to happen.
There's more in this story, actually. So we talked about the scheduling models a couple weeks ago. Pete dropped a little nugget in here, something that they're considering that is an interesting twist on the possible new schedule when Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. A bunch of your texts have come in, though, about this, and I think that somebody is going to make sure this doesn't happen, and I'll tell you who when we come back. Back to the text on that. We're talking about this Pete Thamel story. For just joining us, ESPN, Pete Thamel ran a story not implying, straight up saying, including quotes from a current athletic director in the SEC, that they will consider at their spring meetings having an SEC-only playoff. 8 teams. When Texas and Oklahoma join, at the end of the year, you cut the league in half and have a playoff, and there's your SEC national champion. It's on the table. At least it will be. To the text line, though, if you want to be a part, you can. We'd love to have you on the C Spire. Text line 601-879-4395. Here's the message I referenced earlier. Do you think this might be a scare tactic by Sankey to get the other commissioners and ADs on board with expansion just so the SEC doesn't do this? It's a good question. I think so. And even if it's not, I think somebody would ruin this. And by ruin it, I mean essentially stop it from happening, and it's the Big Ten. The Big Ten is the only other conference in college football that is comparable to the SEC. Right now, they actually distribute more money. That's about to change, but they do. They are comparable in teams that are good enough to compete. They're comparable in revenue, for sure. And that gap is widening and widening and widening. And it's the SEC and it's the Big Ten, and then there's a huge gap before you get to another conference. I think the Big Ten would not, quote-unquote, allow this to happen because they would link up. They would make sure, hey, Greg, you're not leaving us behind. We share television partners. We're on the same footing. If you're going to have a playoff, we're going to be on the other side of that bracket, and we can meet each other in a championship or something like that. The Big Ten would not allow the SEC to separate without linking up because they've got big enough brands and enough money and also big markets, big population states to be an attractive partner to the SEC, if nothing else. So they would stop this before it actually happened to me. They wouldn't let it happen because they have some leverage to make sure that they don't get left behind.
Merger? Do you merge with the SEC? Do you form the Super Conference, a 16-team SEC, and then you go to the Big Ten and you say, okay, what do they? They have 12, right? You go pick off Notre Dame. You got to get them. You got to get Notre Dame.
Yep.
And then you go get. I mean, who's left in the Big Ten to get? Or Big 12 to get? Do you really want Baylor? I don't know.
You get USC. You do it.
You pull USC and Oregon out of the Pac-10, Pac-12. You pull Clemson and maybe Florida State out of the ACC, and you're good.
Yeah.
And you got two 16-team divisions, two 16-team conferences. That's it. That maybe that's the way to go forward.
Jason says, I hope it's a bluff. An SEC only 8-team playoff would suck. I agree with you. Another one says, sounds boring, bunch of rematches. Here's a contrarian says, I'm tired of seeing Notre Dame year in and year out expand the playoff, or I'm in favor of an all-SEC team playoff. Brian in Laurel says the SEC could just add more teams to make it more interesting. What you were saying. He said a 32-team SEC.
So you create, the true power conference by merging with the Big Ten, and you would, like I said, you need to add 4 more teams to the Big Ten to make that happen. But they could do that. I think if you told Notre Dame it's get right or get left, they'd get on board. They'd be like, all right, we don't have any choice anymore.
Well, especially because their NBC contract isn't worth anything. Okay, it is worth something compared to the distribution that the Big Ten and the SEC is about to get. It's not worth anything anymore. They don't get the kind of money that the SEC teams are about to get. It would be an attractive partner for sure.
Yes.
We get another message. Why not just call the winner of the SEC championship the national champion? Why would an SEC playoff be needed? Well, money. That's why.
More money.
I mean, let's be honest. You would watch. I would watch. It would get boring, but I'd watch it. I would. I know I would. I talk a big game about, it sucks. And nope, I'd watch it. I'd watch every snap. I would. So that's why people like us.
I'd watch the games. I'd watch the games. Don't think I wouldn't for 1 second.
John Meridian says the SEC would have to expand way past 16. Yep, for sure. That's how it would be. Another idea in this article was the SEC does their own little thing, and then they play the national champion from the other 4 conferences. Because they would do it. They wouldn't turn down that money. They would hate it, but they would do it.
You need an SEC playoff, and then the winner of that goes to the actual college football playoff. So another 2 SEC games, and that determines the SEC champion, and then that champion goes to plays the actual college football playoff.
Brian says the SEC can't rule the country. Brian, I disagree with you. I think they can. I think
they already
do.
They already do. They already do.
Lucas wants Miami over Florida State. I actually agree with that. That'd be a more fun road trip anyway.
Sure. Well, yeah. The only thing I would wonder is, would Florida separate from Florida State? I don't know if they would or not. They'd be perfectly fine separating from Miami.
Another message. Why would you have to get Notre Dame? This isn't the 1960s. I agree in terms of the ability to win, but the brand is so...
Money. Guys, y'all have got to get this. Money drives everything. Notre Dame, first off, Notre Dame is still a team that wins a lot of football games. But secondly, their brand is huge. They have fans in every state. They draw eyeballs. This is all about money. It's not about tradition. It's not about who's good then, now, whenever. It's about how can we make the most money. Simple as that.
That you said it perfectly last week. I think it was last week. Once everybody starts to realize that major college athletics is just about money, they will be happier. Or something like I'm paraphrasing what you said, but
money and winning, but winning is what gets you money.
Yeah, that's all it's about.
It's all about money, guys. Yeah, yeah. When we talk about NIL, it's about money. When we talk about college football playoff expansion, conference expansion, it's about money. When we talk about TV, it's about money. It's a business. The games are the service that the business provides. Yep. We get to watch the games. That's what we pay our money for. These are businesses. They are designed to be profitable. It's no different than in Walmart or anything else, man.
Steven in Greenville disagrees, says he doesn't think it would get boring. I'd watch. I'd get bored with it, but I'd still watch. Steven suggests the Big SEC.
The Big SEC.
That's what it's called, the Big SEC. I like that. If they go down that road, it wouldn't surprise me. Exactly what you said. You would take these 2 conferences and cherry pick and then create a super league, and that would be it.
That's the thing. We've talked about power conferences in the past. The SEC is not going to drop anybody. State, Ole Miss, they're staying in, right? They're not going to drop anybody.
Nope, they will not drop a single team.
That's not going to do that. The teams that need to be worried, Cal, Stanford, Wake Forest. Those are the teams that are not in the SEC or the Big Ten that provide nothing. Washington State, Rutgers. Well, Rutgers is in the Big Ten, so they're probably okay. Boston College. Those are the teams that will be left on the outside. Yeah. State and Ole Miss, South Carolina. The teams that are
even
not
Vanderbilt.
Of the top tier of the Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Arkansas. They're fine. They're not good. The SEC's not kicking anybody out.
No.
At least I don't think.
No, there's like a bylaw that would have to have a lot of vote. No. I mean, maybe somebody like Alabama will look at Vanderbilt and say, why am I sharing revenue with them? But I just... that would be a lot of work and unnecessary work for them.
Vandy's got good lawyers. You don't want to go to court with them.
By the way, if this does not happen and the SEC stays at 16 and they all work it out, one of the scheduling ideas that they are proposing is a 1+7 model. So you get one permanent rival, and the other 7 conference games for you rotate on an annual basis.
Be great for State and Ole Miss.
Yeah, it would.
Because they keep each other, obviously. And then you know you're going to have years where you're not playing Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. You know those years are going to happen.
Yep.
You could have a year where it's Kentucky, Vandy, Missouri, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, something like that. I mean, you could get that. You could get lucky.
That's not one I've
That's
heard
how you
of
go to the playoff.
Until today. But that one I can
That's
be
how
on
you go to the
board
playoff.
with.
That's a year where you could go undefeated or go 11-1 with the right team.
1 plus 7. I'm interested in that.